With regards to the wives, I find it a pity. A great man such as yourself should be limited to one wife. It really is a pity. But are you saying that in your doctrine, it is a sin to have more than one wife?
So according to the Bible would say that we are supposed to have one. So it would be outside of God's commandments, which would cause it to be a sin. Absolutely. It would be adultery. That's what adultery is. Adultery is when you sleep with a woman that's not your wife or that's either married to another man.
See, I think that's what I always heard is you sleep with a woman that's not your wife. But if you marry 2 or 3 or 4 wives, and in fact, in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, we can read of one situation, and I thought this was actually quite strange, where a particular person that was favored by God, his wife couldn't have children, and then God basically ordered that man to lay with the maidservant of his wife,
right?
And then to what's that?
You're talking about Abraham,
yes, and then to marry her,
right? So Abraham didn't marry.
Did God order?
All right. So what you're saying and what we're kind of meshing doctrine with today's belief system. I'll say it like that. And biblically, at the beginning of time, the word Genesis comes from the word Barashith, which is a Hebrew word which means beginning. Beginning of what? Nations. So God used Abraham to bring forth 2 nations. One nation would be his son Isaac, which became Jacob and us. And then you had his Hagar, which was his handmaid, right? That was his wife's handmaid, actually, that she gave to him as a surrogate. She was going to be his surrogate because she couldn't have. So he didn't marry Hagar. Hagar was considered a concubine, like a lesser.
Sure.
Understand?
Which was also condoned in the Bible as well.
Right. At that particular time, it was. But today, in today's time, this 1 Timothy 3:2, it says, a bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, and of good behavior.
All right. First and foremost, I want to begin this lesson by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakah Kodash. I want to give double honor to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone, and peace and mercy to the 144,000, the rest of the elect. I'm Brother Yawanathan, back with another quick lesson, Lord willing, it's edifying. And I just want to get on this topic of polygamy real quick because you had the Vegas elder upload that video in which the IUIC, or a member of the IUIC, but we know they all teach this, starting with Nathaniel, Bishop Nathaniel, teaching that polygamy is a sin according to the Bible, and that's a complete lie. All right, polygamy, as far as the man goes, is not a sin. This is 1 John 3:4. Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. So sin means that you broke a law, statute, or commandment of the Lord. There's no law that forbids polygamy on a man's end. All right, because I got to specify like that because, you have the word polygamy, but then you got the word polygyny. And here on Google, just a quick AI overview, polygamy refers to having multiple spouses, while polygyny specifically means one man having multiple wives. So that's really what they're referring to, because it says here that polygyny is a specific type of polygamy. So it is a type of polygamy. But when you say polygamy, it really means that the man and the woman could have multiple spouses. That's not true. That would be adultery if a woman has more than one husband. That's actually law. All right, the law of adultery, which is punishable by death. That's the consequence of that sin is death, a death sentence. All right, but there's no death sentence or any punishment for a man that wants to have multiple wives, which is polygyny. That's not a sin. There's no law that states that. And let me get one more scripture before I get into this information. Romans 4:15, because the law worketh wrath, for where no law is, there is no transgression. So you would have to provide a law that says men can only have one wife. And we're not talking about what Apostle Paul said. He said a bishop must be blameless, the husband of one wife. Every man is not a bishop. All right, but you will have to provide a law in the Bible that states that a man cannot have multiple wives, and that's going to be impossible. because it's not in there. So going to this next Google search, I looked up polygyny in ancient Israel, because when you look up polygamy in ancient Israel, you're going to get a different search result, being that polygyny and polygamy is two different things. So when you look up polygamy, it's going to say it basically wasn't allowed. All right, even though it was practiced, it wasn't allowed. If you look up polygyny, you get a whole different answer. All right, which it says right here, while the Torah doesn't explicitly forbid it, polygyny, a man having multiple wives, was practiced by some prominent figures in the Old Testament, including Abraham, Jacob, David, and Solomon. So all the righteous forefathers, these were all righteous men. These were not men that did evil before the sight of the Lord. Now they sinned, all right? All of us sinned. You know, the only man who was sinless, so to speak, was Yahawashi. All right, when he came 2,000 years ago. And that's different. But we talking about the forefathers of the promise, man, our righteous heritage. Because you had wicked Israelites always, and you always had righteous Israelites. All of these men that were named were all righteous men of Yahweh Shai. So why would they be doing something that's a sin like that? And why was it never mentioned to either one of them, not one of them, that they were sinning, that they was going off and breaking the law on that subject, you know, on being polygynous? Because it wasn't a sin. Because why would the Lord let them do it and not say nothing? You know, that's dumb. It says, and the practice was not explicitly prohibited. So the law did not prohibit a man to marry more than one woman. The definition of polygyny, that the Bible does not prohibit that. The law doesn't prohibit that. So if the law doesn't prohibit it, it's not a sin. When Paul was given, you know, he was basically setting up the churches. So he was giving them structure by telling them that a bishop must only have one wife, you know, the husband of one wife, because a bishop is basically an overseer of the church. That's a lot of responsibility. All right. So, yeah, when you a bishop, obviously, you know, you can't be having all these wives. All right. You can't be polygynous as you might want to be. You know, you got to practice a lot of self-control and discipline, because you have a larger responsibility over the church. Now, can any regular member of the church have more than one wife? Absolutely. All right. Once again, it's not prohibited. It's not a law. So therefore, it's not a sin if a man was to do that. Is it expedient to do that? Sometimes, maybe not for most men. All right. If you don't know what you're doing, you know, you don't got the wisdom. And in ancient Israel, if you didn't have the wealth, it wouldn't really be a wise thing to do that, because you got to take care of these women. But remember, Isaiah 4:1, that's the topic of the week. That's the scripture of the week, man. Isaiah 4:1. What does it say? 7 women is going to take hold of one man, eating their own bread and wearing their own apparel. So that's why when you read that law, let's go down a little bit here. Deuteronomy 21. Hold on. Deuteronomy 21 and 15. Let's see what that says. Oh, if a man have 2 wives, one beloved and another hated, he sinneth. No, it don't say that. It doesn't say that. So this already giving you a scenario in which a man is going to have more than one wife. Does it say that he broke the law? Does it say he's going off? Does it say punish him? Does it say stone him? Nah, it says, and they have, and another hated, and they have borne him children, both the beloved and the hated. And if the firstborn son be hers that was hated, then it shall be, when he maketh his sons to inherit that which he hath, that he may not make the son of the beloved firstborn before the son of the hated, which is indeed the firstborn. So what it's telling you is that if you do have 2 wives, one you love more than the other, all right, maybe you don't like the other one so much for whatever reason, you just like one more than the other. You have favorites. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you have a child by the one that you don't really like that much, and that's the firstborn, he still got to get the inheritance, even though you don't love that woman as much as you do the other wife. You see, you can't just have favoritism when it comes to the inheritance and how you give it out to your children, to your sons. But you can have favoritism when it comes to your wives. You know, you got 5 wives. You like, you know, 2 of them is your more favorites, and the other 3, You like them, you love them, but they're not your favorites. There's nothing wrong with that. It's here in the law. This is Deuteronomy. That means the second book of the law. It's stating that a man can have 2 wives indeed, and this is how he has to give out the inheritance in the event that the lesser loved wife has his firstborn son. All right, it's right there in the law. So it doesn't prohibit it. It doesn't say he can't do that. If a man have 2 wives, take one of them away and give it to another brother. You niggas are wicked, man. At the IUIC, y'all men are wicked. The leadership, that is. But even you men that's following them, you either deaf, blind, or dumb, or maybe all of the above. All right, to be following men like this. And you're not looking up anything for yourself. You're not doing any research for yourself. All right, which is a shame. What's that other one? Another wife, is it? Yeah, Exodus 21:10. If he take him another wife, talking about a man of Israel, this is the law in the book of Exodus, her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage shall he not diminish. So what does that mean? You got to provide for her. That's according to the law. But again, Isaiah 4:1 states that they're basically going to be providing for themselves because this is an end time prophecy. So when they say that it's a man's job to provide and protect, there is a truth behind that. All right, in the sense that according to the law, if you was to get you another wife, you know, you got to have enough resources for her. You can't be starving her, all right, while the other wife is eating, and, you know, the other wife is, she don't got no clothes, and, you know, and you're not giving her the you know what. So that's what it means by her duty of marriage. So marriage is consummated by sex. It means to join. How do you join? You become one flesh when you share your DNA, so to speak, when you put your rod in her, all right, and you leave your seed. But that doesn't mean that the man is disposable and he's just a bank account, how they try to portray it in this society. See, because in this society, women's could work. And, you know, in the ancient world, a woman will work for you. You will have your land, your cattle, you know, all your resources, and she will basically maintain these things, you know, feed the chicken, till the land, as far as, you know, gardening, which really that was like a man's job. But, you know, women like to do stuff like that. They like to get in there and plant seeds and stuff. So she'll be helping you out with all of that. And that will be her work. You see, but now these women got their own careers, you know, they got their own jobs. So if you get you a woman in this society, yeah, she can help you with the bills. You know, yeah, she can put money in your pockets, all right? Because that's the way that it's set up. And look at the economy right now. Look at this inflated economy, this recession economy, all right? It's hard for one person to just do it all by themselves, man. You know how many type of hours you're going to have to work? You know, to just do it all on your own like that. All right. So if you get you a woman, yeah, you better make her go half on the bills or something, even if it's not half, 25% or something. All right. There will be a benefit right there if you had a polygynous marriage in this society. All right. As long as you're able to still, you know, do the work and maintain your lot, your responsibility and the truth, but have them there to help you financially, man. All right, to help each other. It's supposed to be some form of like sisterhood too, you know, when you have the handmaidens and stuff like that, you know, the midwives. These were ancient things that we used to practice, but obviously in this society they've been taken away from us, and now they're being demonized even by Israelites, man, which is completely demonic. These ways of life that basically make life easier. And we're not really looking, you know, this is not the kingdom. So it's not all about just living an easy life, so to speak. But that's why the Lord put these things here, man. So you will be foolish to say, oh, yeah, I just want one woman. That's not even true, man. All right. No man should even say that shit out of his mouth, bro. I'll look at you sideways. You say some shit like that out your mouth, man. All right. That's weird. That's weirdo behavior. All right. And that's really just to appease to a woman. 9 times out of 10, you're just trying to basically lie to a chick. You pandering, man. All right, we're not supposed to be doing that. Israelite men ain't supposed to be doing that. All right, so let me go back to this this Google search. I think that's pretty much it. Let me see. It said the Old Testament describes several figures, including Abraham, Jacob, David, Solomon, as having multiple wives. And we can read these accounts in the scriptures, man. All right. King Solomon himself, I think he had 600 wives and 300 concubines, man. So this is not a lie. You see, the Torah doesn't explicitly forbid polygyny, but it does contain regulations related to it, such as ensuring the inheritance of the firstborn, which we just read, even if the mother is not the favored wife. So that's pretty much the point. Scholarly perspective. Let's read the scholarly perspective. Some scholars believe that polygyny was not a common practice in Israel, which it was, but they're going to explain why, as it required a significant amount of wealth. So they're basically saying it was an aristocratical, if that's the word, it was a thing of basically like royalty. It wasn't just every common Israelite man that would be able to do this. You would have to have money, or rather wealth, but money, you know, land, silver, gold, and cattle. Others argue that it continued to be practiced well into the biblical period and beyond, even among Jews. So the scholars, you know, some scholars are right, some scholars are wrong. What's the ultimate equalizer? The scriptures, man. That's the filter. You got to go back to the scripture. There's no law that's prohibiting or says it's a sin for a man to have more than one wife, but it gives you the structure and the way which you have to do it. And if you can't do it that way, then it will be a sin. All right, but remember, we all sinning. Every day we're sinning in this society. All right, so who's keeping the law perfectly? Not them. The IUIC is not keeping the law perfectly. Sakari, that shit got exposed. Al-Azhar is not keeping the law perfectly. All of these dudes, any man that's proclaiming that he's keeping the law perfectly is a liar. It tells you that in 1 John, the 4th chapter, he's a liar. And the Most High is not in him. Okay? Yahweh Shah is not dealing with these guys, man. He's dealing with the elect. And the elect is going to receive and understand these things, man. Polygyny, there's no sin behind that. There's nothing evil about that. That's a fucking Americanized, westernized ideology. One man, one woman. That's some faggot shit, man. I'm going to say it like that. You know, that's some depopulation agenda shit. That's not biblical. That's not part of the ancient manners and customs of the Israelites. The ancient Israelites practice polygyny. And we are the Israelites. But we're not in ancient times, all right? So we're not able to do things like that in the ancient world. We was discontinued from our heritage, but now we coming back to it. So you shouldn't be following guys like this. All right, that's the point. So with that, I must give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai. Hope and pray you were edified through the Holy Spirit.